Hi guys, and welcome to the Pecos Aesthetic Woodshop. Beginning woodworkers have an endless amount of information available to them these days. Some of it's helpful, and some not so much. The core concepts that are essential to understand sometimes get lost in the noise. Today I want to talk about the woodworking basics that actually matter, and the things I wish someone had explained to me when I first started woodworking. When starting out, you may want to pick up your dimensional lumber or some hardwoods even from a big box store. But if you find that you really enjoy woodworking, you're going to want to branch out and visit local hardwood dealers at some point. These stores are going to have a lot more variety in the hardwood types and dimensions you can get. When you're ready to take that leap, there are some important things to know. Lumber at the hardwood dealers is sold by the board foot. One board foot is equal to a 12-inch long and wide board that is 1 inch thick. That's a good concept to know, but it doesn't really help you out when you get to the hardwood dealer in any practical way. What does though is if you take the length of the board you're buying, multiply it by the width, and then the thickness in inches, and then divide that number by 144, this equals the board feet in that board and lets you calculate the cost of the board easily at the dealer. You'll also see labels on the woods that say rough cut or S4S. Rough cut means it has been cut to rough dimensions and no surfacing work like jointing or planing has been done. A board that is S4S means it has already been surfaced on all four sides of the wood, which comes in handy if you don't have machines at home for dimensioning your own lumber. Keep in mind that S4S costs more per board foot than rough cut. Another concept you want to think about is the 10% rule. When going to the dealer, you will most likely have already come up with a plan for your project and calculated out how many board feet you're going to need. Always buy, at a minimum, 10% more than this number to account for mistakes, unusable boards, or changes in the plan. The importance of marking and measuring in woodworking can't be overstated. A lot of beginners want to jump into cutting, shaping, and building right away. But learning what tools you need and some tips and tricks about how to lay out a joint properly is a skill and should be understood before you start building. I learned early on, if your layout isn't accurate, your project won't be, and this is just going to cause frustration. It's a great idea to take an online course or go to a local store like Woodcraft to learn more about this. These are examples of some of the types of tools that you're going to acquire over time to mark and measure your projects. Straight, flat, and square is your goal whenever you're dimensioning lumber, and this is another great topic to either take an online course for or go to an in-person class on. If you're using rough cut lumber, this is the first step for every project you're going to do. And starting off with something that's not straight, flat, and square is again going to lead to frustration further on down the line. Trust me.
Been there, done that.
I took a 2-hour class at Woodcraft when I was starting out, and it was extremely helpful. The classes were affordable, and they worked great for me. Start out buying your wood S4S, and then as you gain confidence and skills, you can buy rough cut lumber and the machines and hand tools to do that work. Wood is constantly in motion. It's a hygroscopic material, meaning it's on a never-ending quest to reach an equilibrium with the moisture in the air of the environment around it. If it's in a drier environment than the moisture content of the wood, moisture will leave the wood, and vice versa. This is the basis of how a kiln works to dry green lumber. Wood is considered unstable, green, or wet when the moisture content of the wood is over roughly 6 to 8%. If you start a project with wood over this percentage, it's a recipe for disaster and a big gamble.
Hit me.
Sir, you have 21.
Hit me.
You may get away with it once or twice, but it will eventually get you and that brand new coffee table you just put blood, sweat, and tears into. The practical takeaway is this. If you're buying wood for a project that you want to start right away, buy wood at the appropriate moisture content, and when you bring it home, give it 2 to 3 days so it acclimates to your shop. If buying wet or green wood, know in advance that you're going to need to allow time for it to dry, and this can be a long time. It's also important to know how wood moves. Think of wood like a bundle of straws. The straws represent the wood fibers. Wood will have much more movement across these fibers than lengthwise. We could go down the rabbit hole on this and talk a lot more about wood movement, but the takeaway for a beginner here is to know if you build a table, it's going to move a lot more this way than this way. Now that you have a better understanding of the makeup of wood, you're in a great position to better understand the types of cuts you can make. Before we get into that, to orient ourselves, I want us to understand the parts of a board. Boards have 6 sides, 2 faces, 2 edges, and 2 ends. So the first cut up is a rip cut, and this is a cut that's parallel to the wood fibers. This comes into practice in the shop most on your table saw or a bandsaw. Next is a cross cut. This is a cut that is perpendicular to the wood fibers. In my own shop, I have a miter saw that I use to make these rough cross cuts, but when I want a cleaner finish cut with less tear out, I use my table saw with a dedicated crosscut sled. See the above video if you want to learn how to build one. Miter cuts are cuts that are cut at an angle across the face of a board. Again, a miter saw can make this cut, but a dedicated sled for your table saw will do an even better job. You're going to use this cut when making picture frames, for example. The last cut I wanted to talk about is a bevel cut. A bevel cut is similar to a miter, but the angle is cut on the edge of a board. You'll come across the need for this cut in projects like pillar wraps or some cabinetry work. Over the course of your woodworking career, you're going to come across a need to have good work holding solutions about a bagazillion times.
What did he say?
This is achieved through clamps, jigs, and vices. There's many different styles of clamps, and they each specialize in something specific. This one's to clamp corners, this one's to clamp panels, this one's to clamp miters, and so on. I can tell you after 10 years, I have 6 or 7 different varieties of clamps, and I've had many situations where I needed more or a different kind. The point being, you're going to need a variety of clamps and lots of them.
Clamp. I said clamp, clamp, come on, move it.
There are a lot of different vices out there as well, and this is going to come into play with your primary workbench. You're going to need a main bench to do joinery and hand tool work on, and a good vise or 2 on your bench is going to be essential. There are a lot of great videos out there that describe the different types of vices and what they do, and when you're ready to tackle a workbench, you're going to want to check those out. There are dozens of different types of cutting blades in a wood shop, but we're going to discuss the 2 main cuts, rip cuts and cross cuts, and the blade characteristics for each. The rip cut blade will require fewer teeth than a crosscut blade and will have larger gullets. Gullets are the spaces between the teeth that help move chips and sawdust away from the cut. This design excels at making faster cuts with the grain of the wood. A crosscut blade will have more teeth and smaller gullets because the feed rate of a crosscut is best done at a slower rate. A combination blade will have a combination of both blade features. A great company and the one I buy my blades from is Forest. I use their Woodworker 2 blade that is a combination blade, and it gives me more than adequate rip cuts and cross cuts on my table saw. That blade has 40 teeth. I also picked up a Chopmaster blade from them for dedicated cross cutting on my miter saw. That blade has 80 teeth. The topic of finishing and woodworking is a loaded topic, but it's important to understand 2 major categories and how they work up front. These are penetrating finishes and surface finishes. Penetrating finishes penetrate into the surface of the wood and give it a natural look, but provide little protection against scuffs, dents, and dings. These include finishes like Danish oil and tung oil. Your best bet for these finishes is to use them on indoor projects that you expect to get less wear. These finishes are also easy to repair in comparison to surface finishes. Surface finishes create a film on top of the surface of the wood and penetrate into the wood far less. Examples of surface finishes are polyurethane, varnish, and lacquer. These offer greater protection for your piece and are a good choice for tabletops, desktops, and outdoor furniture. The downside is they can chip and bubble, and repairing them generally requires more work and sanding. And I know how we all love sanding in the woodworking community. Safety! Safety in a workshop is obviously important as we're working around saw blades, moving parts, and heavy equipment. Some are more obvious than others though. Hearing protection and eye protection are two of the more obvious measures to take. But you don't want to forget about your nasal passages and your lungs, and you want to pick up a good respirator as well. If you're interested in learning more about dust collection, dust, and the damage it can do to your lungs, check out this video that goes into great detail on that topic. I saved this for last because in my mind, it's the most important point. Your projects don't have to be perfect for you to be successful in woodworking. We all see those videos and pictures of projects that people have created showing absolutely beautiful and what looks like perfect work. But guess what? No project is perfect, and most of the work people show you on YouTube is the work they want you to see. They won't show you a zoomed in shot of a gap in a joint or a miter that didn't quite close. But I guarantee you their project has flaws. If you're like most woodworkers, you're going to have strengths and weaknesses, and you're going to take on projects designed to test your skills and grow. Some of it's going to come out exactly like you planned, but a lot of it won't. The takeaway is your work will have mistakes and it won't be perfect. If you choose to focus only on that, I promise you're going to have a less enjoyable experience overall in your wood shop. So give yourself a break and enjoy the process. Thanks for watching all. Stay tuned for a workbench series that I have coming up, and check out this YouTube recommendation for more content from the Pecos Aesthetic Woodshop.